The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee when my phone vibrated. My daughter Michelle's name lit up the screen. Her tone was flat, almost mechanical. "Mom, I'm calling to let you know we're leaving for Australia tomorrow. I sold your lake cottage and your Toyota. We needed the funds immediately. I have to go now." The line went dead before I could respond. 47 years of raising her, of sacrifice and devotion, and she discarded me like yesterday's newspaper. But I took a slow breath and allowed myself a small smile, because there was something my precious daughter had no idea about. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 69 years old, and until that phone call, I believed I understood who my daughter truly was. I had lost my husband Daniel just 8 months earlier. He collapsed from a massive stroke one quiet Tuesday morning while we were having our usual breakfast routine, the same ritual we'd shared for 47 years. That particular morning, he had prepared my tea with honey and buttered toast, exactly as he always did. He had brushed his lips against my temple and whispered, "Good morning, beautiful." Those became his final words to me. After his passing, Michelle had seemed more attentive and caring, or so I convinced myself. She visited 4 times weekly. She handled all the funeral logistics and kept me company during grocery shopping trips. She even insisted I schedule a complete medical evaluation. "Mom, you need to prioritize your health now that you're on your own," she'd tell me with that expression I mistook for genuine affection. But now I realized it masked pure calculation. The lake cottage had been our private retreat for decades. Daniel and I purchased it when Michelle turned 13 through tremendous effort and financial discipline. Every summer season we'd escape there, creating lasting memories, hosting birthdays and holiday celebrations. Michelle would introduce us to various boyfriends and eventually her husband Marcus. I would prepare elaborate meals, handle the cleaning, and manage everyone's laundry. It was our cherished family ritual. I never imagined she'd view it merely as a financial asset. And the Toyota, that dependable sedan, Daniel maintained like a treasured possession. He'd wash it every Saturday without fail, service it religiously, and always positioned it carefully under the maple tree for shade. Michelle knew perfectly well what that vehicle represented to me. It was my last tangible connection to him. His cologne still lingered faintly in the upholstery. When she disconnected, I remained seated on that rigid blue plastic chair, surrounded by other patients waiting their turn. And for the first time since Daniel's funeral, my eyes stayed dry. Something unexpected occurred within me, a strange calmness I hadn't experienced since losing Daniel, because in that instant I recalled something I had entirely forgotten about. 4 days before his death, Daniel had pressed a sealed brown envelope into my hands. "Margaret, place this inside your nightstand drawer. If anything happens to me, open it eventually, but only when you feel emotionally prepared." I had stored it away without giving it much consideration. Following the funeral, overwhelmed by grief and endless administrative tasks, I simply forgot its existence. But there it remained, patiently waiting for me at home. The medical assistant called my name to enter the examination room. The physician checked my vitals and declared I was remarkably healthy for my age, that I simply needed better rest and improved nutrition. I nodded politely and smiled appropriately, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I was contemplating that mysterious envelope, replaying the coldness in Michelle's voice and concluding that Marcus was undoubtedly orchestrating everything behind the scenes. He had never warmed to me. He consistently regarded me as an inconvenience. I departed the medical building and walked deliberately toward the bus station. I no longer possessed a vehicle, according to Michelle's declaration. But while I waited, I couldn't suppress a knowing smile. There was something almost poetic about this entire situation. My daughter assumed she had stripped me of everything meaningful, but what she remained ignorant of was that Daniel, my thoughtful Daniel, had always been someone who prepared meticulously for every contingency. The bus arrived and I selected a window seat. I observed the city flowing past, the residential buildings, the commercial establishments, people rushing frantically everywhere, each carrying their private tragedies and concealed secrets. I possessed my own secrets as well, and I was moments away from uncovering them. When I entered my house, I proceeded directly to my bedroom. I pulled open the nightstand drawer, and there sat the brown envelope, precisely where I had placed it months ago. My fingers trembled slightly as I retrieved it. I could detect multiple documents contained within. Daniel had inscribed my name across the front in his distinctive, precise handwriting. I settled onto the bed we had occupied together for countless years and inhaled deeply. Darkness was beginning to fall outside, and the house was filling with those recognizable shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope carefully, as though unwrapping a precious gift. What I discovered inside would alter everything fundamentally. What I found in that envelope stole my breath completely. There were official legal documents, property titles, investment certificates, and a handwritten letter from Daniel. My vision blurred with tears as I recognized his familiar penmanship. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading these words, it means I've departed from this world. Forgive me for keeping so much hidden while I was alive, but I wanted to shield you from unnecessary stress. Throughout our years together, I invested our combined savings in real estate and various business ventures. We don't merely own the lake cottage, we possess 7 additional properties, including the condominium complex, where Michelle and Marcus currently reside. We also hold substantial equity in 4 different companies worth considerably more than you could possibly imagine. You are wealthy, my darling. You were always wealthy in spirit, but now you are financially secure on paper as well. My hands shook as I examined the documentation. There were titles to residential properties scattered across different neighborhoods throughout the city. A prestigious downtown penthouse, a modest inn along the coastline, and surprisingly the 18-story condominium tower where my daughter lived. Daniel had been the invisible owner for the previous 12 years, but had structured everything under a corporate entity I knew nothing about. And according to these legal papers, I was the exclusive heir of that corporation. There were also banking records for accounts whose existence I never suspected, displaying figures that seemed impossible. Daniel had worked as a municipal transportation driver for 42 years, but evidently he had simultaneously been an exceptionally shrewd investor. Every dollar we saved, every sacrifice we embraced, he had multiplied quietly, and I remained completely unaware. In his letter, Daniel explained that he had maintained this secrecy because he didn't want me burdened with financial concerns, or for Michelle to discover our actual economic status. You understand our daughter, Margaret. If she knew we possessed such substantial wealth, her behavior would change dramatically. I want her to love us for our character, not our financial resources. What profound irony. Our daughter had abandoned us assuming we had virtually nothing, when the reality was we possessed considerable means. That evening, sleep eluded me completely. I wandered through the house, touching the worn furniture and the decorative pieces Michelle had consistently criticized as outdated and unfashionable. I studied the family photographs arranged on the walls, particularly the one where she was 6 years old, perched on Daniel's knee and laughing without restraint. Where had that affectionate little girl disappeared to? When had she transformed into someone so detached, so manipulative? The following morning, quite early, the telephone rang. It was Michelle again. Her voice sounded altered, gentler somehow, but I had already learned to distrust those subtle shifts in her demeanor. "Mom, how are you managing? I wanted to inform you we've already processed the transactions for the cottage and the Toyota. We transferred your portion into your checking account. It's not substantial, but it should sustain you for several months, while you search for something more modest." "My portion?" I inquired, maintaining a composed tone. "Yes, Mom, we obviously weren't going to leave you destitute. We provided you with 35%. That's equitable, wouldn't you? Agree? We require the capital for our investment opportunity in Australia. Marcus has discovered an extraordinary business proposition there. 35% of my own possessions. How remarkably generous. I understand, sweetheart. And when is your departure?" "This evening, our luggage is completely packed. We'll be overseas for at least 8 months. Possibly longer if the venture succeeds. But don't concern yourself, Mom. When we return, we'll assist you in locating a small studio apartment. Something appropriate for your circumstances." Appropriate for my circumstances. As though she possessed any understanding of what my circumstances actually were. "All right, Michelle, have a safe journey." "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd be understanding. You've always been so accommodating. We care about you tremendously." And she disconnected. I stood holding the phone in my hand. And for the first time in many months, I laughed aloud. I laughed in a way I hadn't since Daniel's passing. The situation was so absurdly ironic. It was almost comedic. My daughter had robbed me, evicted me from my own property, addressed me with insufferable condescension, and all to finance an Australian adventure that would likely end disastrously. But what disturbed me most profoundly wasn't the financial theft. It was the effortlessness with which she had eliminated me from her life. 47 years of my existence devoted to her welfare, of sacrifice, of limitless love, and she had erased me from her world with a brief phone conversation. That was what genuinely wounded me. I accessed my bank account through the online portal. Predictably, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous from their perspective, but to me represented an insult. They had sold the lake cottage for substantially less than its market value, undoubtedly because they needed immediate liquidity, and they had disposed of Daniel's Toyota for a fraction of its worth. That evening, from my window, I observed Michelle and Marcus loading their baggage into a waiting taxi. He was managing 2 enormous suitcases. She carried what appeared to be a designer carry-on bag. I watched them embrace, kiss affectionately, and discuss their plans excitedly. They resembled 2 young lovers embarking on an exciting adventure. They never glanced toward my window, never offered any goodbye. When the taxi departed down the street, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea and Daniel's documents arranged across the table. I needed to make several crucial decisions. I could contact an attorney, reclaim my properties legally, and recover everything they had stolen. But something suggested there was a superior approach to managing this situation, a more instructive method. I telephoned Mr. Richardson, the attorney who had managed Daniel's legal matters. He had attended the funeral, offered his sincere condolences, and instructed me to contact him if I ever required assistance. Well, now I required his expertise. Mrs. Hayes, it's wonderful to hear from you. How have you been? I'm managing well, Mr. Richardson. I need to meet with you urgently. I discovered some documents from Daniel that I don't fully comprehend. Certainly, you can visit my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there. That evening, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully through the entire night. I dreamed about Daniel. He was relaxing in his preferred armchair, reading the daily newspaper, exactly like every morning. And when he noticed me, he smiled warmly and said, "It's about time, my darling. It's about time you defended yourself properly." I awakened with an unfamiliar sensation. It wasn't precisely happiness, but it wasn't the profound sadness I had carried for so many months either. It was something resembling determination. For the first time since Daniel's death, I possessed a clear objective. I was going to reclaim what rightfully belonged to me, but not in the manner Michelle anticipated. The following morning, I dressed with greater attention than usual. I wore my burgundy dress, the one Daniel always said made me look distinguished. I styled my hair properly and applied subtle makeup. And when I examined my reflection, I saw a woman I hadn't recognized in considerable time. I saw a resilient woman. Mr. Richardson's office was located in the business district. It was a traditional but refined building with polished marble flooring and expansive windows. He welcomed me with a cordial smile, but when I presented him the documents, his expression transformed entirely. "Mrs. Hayes, this is far more substantial than I anticipated." Daniel was an exceptionally intelligent man. "Look, according to these legal papers, you are the owner of—" "I know, Mr. Richardson. I've already reviewed everything thoroughly. What I need to understand is what legal options I have." Mr. Richardson explained that everything was properly executed, that the documents were completely legitimate, and that I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I had already suspected. The sale of the lake cottage was unlawful because Michelle possessed no legal authority to sell it. "We can recover the cottage immediately, Mrs. Hayes, and we can also initiate legal proceedings against your daughter for fraudulent misrepresentation." "No, Mr. Richardson, I don't want to pursue legal action. I want to handle this differently. I want everything to remain confidential for the present time. Can you assist me?" He regarded me with curiosity, but he nodded affirmatively. "Of course, you are my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly recover the lake cottage. Do whatever is legally necessary to nullify that fraudulent transaction. And I need you to help me establish genuine control of all my properties, particularly the condominium building where my daughter resides." "I understand. It will be a process requiring several weeks, but it's entirely feasible." "Perfect. And Mr. Richardson, I need absolute confidentiality. No one can know I am orchestrating all of this, at least for now." When I departed his office, I felt as though I had awakened from an extremely prolonged dream. I walked through the downtown streets, observing the people, the architecture, the life continuing normally. But for me, everything had fundamentally changed. I had developed a plan. The following weeks were the most peculiar of my entire life. Officially, I was an impoverished widow who had been abandoned by her daughter. But secretly, I was a wealthy woman, quietly orchestrating the recovery of my assets. Mr. Richardson worked efficiently, and every few days he would telephone me with progress reports on the legal proceedings. I decided to remain in my house for the time being. It was mine after all, although Michelle probably expected me to relocate into a single room. Every morning I would awaken, have breakfast at the same table where Daniel and I had shared so many years, and then venture out for a walk through the neighborhood. The neighbors would greet me with that combination of sympathy and curiosity they reserved for recent widows. Dorothy, my neighbor of many years, approached me one afternoon while I was watering the plants in the front garden. "Margaret, dear, is it accurate that Michelle went to Australia and left you completely alone?" "Yes, Dorothy, she departed with Marcus. They have business opportunities over there." "And how are you going to manage financially, sweetheart?" Everyone knows Daniel didn't leave substantial savings. If you only knew, I thought. "Don't worry, Dorothy, I'll manage fine. Do you need anything? I can prepare some food, assist you with groceries. You're very thoughtful, but I'm managing well, truly." Dorothy looked at me with that expression I knew well. It was the same look I had received after the funeral. Compassion mixed with a touch of relief that it wasn't her tragedy. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." These conversations repeated constantly. The butcher, the baker, the woman at the corner market. Everyone spoke to me with that gentle tone they use with the unfortunate, and I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But internally, a part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a dual existence. Mr. Richardson called me one Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Hayes, I have positive news. I was able to nullify the sale of the lake cottage. The purchasers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they recovered their money without any complications. The cottage is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Richardson. And the condominium building where Michelle lives?" "That one is more complex. Technically, you've always been the owner through the corporation, but we need to make some administrative modifications so that you have direct control. That should require another 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After disconnecting, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Michelle. She had been in Australia for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard anything from her. Not a call, not a message, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she obtained the money she needed. But I knew that was going to change soon. I decided to visit the lake cottage. I took the bus to the lake region, the same route Daniel and I had taken hundreds of times. The cottage was exactly as I remembered it, modest, painted cream, colored with a deck overlooking the water. The new owners had placed some potted flowers on the steps, but otherwise everything was the same. I sat on the curb across the street and observed it for an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Michelle was little, running along the shoreline and building sand sculptures. Daniel grilling fresh fish on the barbecue while I made salads in the kitchen. Michelle bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Marcus. All those joyful moments that she had reduced to a simple commercial transaction. An elderly gentleman came out of the cottage and saw me sitting there. He approached me with curiosity. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just reminiscing." I knew the former owners. Yes, I knew them very well. What a shame about what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a bargain, but it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to return the cottage. Did you know them personally? No, we did everything through intermediaries. But they told us the daughter was managing everything because the mother couldn't. What a sad situation. If you only knew how sad it really was, I thought. Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes, fortunately, everything worked out well. Although now we have to search for another cottage, we liked this one very much. I left there with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt. It was the ease with which Michelle had lied about me. She had fabricated a story about my illness. She had used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings, but an obstacle that had to be removed. That night, I called Mr. Richardson again. "Mr. Richardson, I need you to help me with something else. I want to get Daniel's Toyota back too. That will be more difficult, Mrs. Hayes. The Toyota was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it. How is that possible? Apparently, you signed that power of attorney a few months ago after your husband's death. Don't you remember?" There it was, the moment Michelle had started planning all of this. I vaguely remembered signing some papers she had brought to me, telling me they were to facilitate the funeral and inheritance arrangements. I had been so confused by grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. "I understand, Mr. Richardson. Is there any way to get it back?" "We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove that you signed that power of attorney under deception or coercion." "Let's do it. I want to get back everything they took from me." Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I would go out to purchase necessities, talk to the neighbors, and maintain appearances. But in the afternoons, I became a businesswoman. I would study Daniel's documents, talk to Mr. Richardson, and plan my next move. I learned things about finance I never thought I would need to know. I discovered that Daniel had been much smarter than I thought. Every one of his investments had been carefully calculated. The condominium building where Michelle lived, for example, wasn't just profitable from rent. It was in an area that was rapidly appreciating. I also discovered that Marcus, Michelle's husband, had a lot of debt. He had taken out loans using the condominium they lived in as collateral, not knowing he wasn't the real owner. When the banks figured this out, he was going to be in serious trouble. Mr. Richardson called me one Friday with important news. "Mrs. Hayes, we've finished all the paperwork. You now have total control of all your properties. I also got Daniel's Toyota back. The buyer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine. And when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it in exchange for a small compensation." "Excellent work, Mr. Richardson. Now I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter." "What kind of letter?" "An eviction notice." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Hayes, are you sure you want to do this?" "Completely sure." She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she's going to find out how important I really am. I understand. Do you want me to send it to Australia? No, I want you to give it to her when she gets back. I have a feeling it's going to be very soon. I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Dorothy came running to my house with fresh neighborhood news. Margaret, did you know that Marcus is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law, who works there, told me they're investigating some loans he took out using the condominium they live in as collateral. But it turns out the condominium isn't his. Really? Yes, and it seems Michelle didn't know anything. They're saying she's going to have to come back from Australia to sort out this mess. What a complicated situation. Yes, and the worst part is apparently Marcus lied to her about the business in Australia. There was no business. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here. Perfect. Everything was working out exactly as I had expected. Michelle had trusted Marcus, had sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering that he wasn't the man she thought he was. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was experiencing exactly what I had felt when she abandoned me. Betrayal by someone she had completely trusted. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't either, Dorothy. That night, I sat on the deck with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. Daniel used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived a full life watching over their families from the sky. If that was true, then he was up there, watching his plan unfold perfectly. Thank you, my love, I said to the sky. Thank you for taking care of me even after your death. The next day, Mr. Richardson called me early. Mrs. Hayes, I have some news. Your daughter just arrived in the country. She's at the airport alone. Alone? Yes. Apparently, Marcus stayed in Australia. There are rumors they had a very big fight. I see. Did you send the letter? I'm going to send it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up the phone and stood there in the kitchen, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the moment for the first real move had finally arrived. Michelle was about to discover that her mother was not the defenseless victim she believed. Michelle arrived at her condominium on Tuesday night. I knew this because Dorothy, who seemed to have informants throughout the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. Margaret, your daughter came back last night. I saw her go in with one suitcase, but she looked terrible, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, as if she had been crying the whole flight. Alone? Completely alone, and something strange, Margaret. When the doorman asked her for the keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the superintendent to let her in with the emergency copy. Interesting. Marcus had the keys, which meant he had probably decided not to come back. Or maybe Michelle had discovered something about him and had fled. In any case, my daughter was back, and very soon she would receive my little welcome gift. Mr. Richardson called me that same afternoon. Mrs. Hayes, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed that your daughter received it in person. Perfect. How long did we give her? 30 days to vacate the condominium as per legal standards. But Mrs. Hayes, are you sure you want to do this? She is your daughter after all. Mr. Richardson, my daughter kicked me out of my own house with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things without asking. She treated me like garbage. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences. I understand. I just wanted to make sure you had considered all the implications. I have considered them, Mr. Richardson. All of them. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, imagining Michelle's face when she read the letter. The initial confusion, then the disbelief, then the panic. She would probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam her. But when she called to verify, she would discover that everything was completely legal. The next day, as if she had been waiting for my call, the phone rang early in the morning. It was Michelle, and her voice sounded desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently." "Good morning, honey. How was Australia?" "Mom, I don't have time for that right now. I received a very strange letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate my condominium in 30 days. It must be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this?" "An eviction notice. How strange. From whom?" "From a company I've never heard of. It's called, wait, let me find the letter. Daniel Investments, Incorporated. Do you know this company?" Daniel had used his own name for the company. How poetic. "No, honey, I've never heard that name." "Are you sure the letter is legitimate?" "That's what I want to find out. Mom, I need you to help me. I don't know what to do. Marcus left me in Australia. He ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening." There was the confirmation. Marcus had abandoned her. Probably when the money ran out, or when he realized that the legal problems at home were more serious than he thought. Poor Michelle. She had sacrificed her family for a worthless man. "I'm so sorry, honey. Where are you now?" "I'm in the condominium, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else." The irony was perfect. Now that she was left without the man for whom she had abandoned me, she remembered she had a mother. "Of course, honey. Come over whenever you want." "I'm on my way." I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, tied my hair in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Michelle arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to see: a poor, vulnerable widow who had been abandoned by her own daughter. Michelle arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was surprised at how bad she looked. She had lost weight, had deep circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and unkempt. Her eyes were red from crying. "Mom," she said, and for a moment I thought she was going to hug me, but she stopped as if she suddenly remembered how things had ended between us. "Come in, honey. Do you want some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat in the kitchen at the same table where I had read Daniel's documents weeks ago. Michelle looked small in that chair, lost, just like when she was a child, and came to tell me about her school problems. "Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left. I know I didn't treat you well." "It's in the past, honey." "No, it's not. I treated you badly. I said horrible things, and now—" Her voice broke. "Now I have no one." "What happened with Marcus?" "He left with a 23-year-old hotel receptionist in Sydney. It turns out there was never any business in Australia. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here and use the money from the sale of your cottage to fund his adventure." "All the debts?" "Yes, Mom, so many debts. It seems he had been taking out loans for years, using the condominium we lived in as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't the owner of the condominium. How is that possible?" Here was my opportunity. "I don't know, honey. Property matters are very complicated." "The problem is that now the banks are coming after me for his debts. They say since we were married, I'm also responsible. And on top of that, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. She started to cry, real tears of genuine desperation. And for a moment, my mother's heart softened. I wanted to hug her, console her, tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice. When she called me from the doctor's office, the ease with which she had discarded me, the way she had talked to me as if I were a burden. Did you talk to a lawyer about the letter? I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent all the money in Australia. Marcus took what little was left when he ran off with that woman. So what are you going to do? I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find a job and can get a small place to live. There was the question I had been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own house, after selling my things, after treating me like garbage, she now wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she had created to save her from the consequences of her own actions. Of course, honey, this will always be your home. Michelle looked at me with surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be so easy. Really, Mom, after everything that happened? You are my daughter, Michelle. That will never change. She got up, and this time she hugged me. It was a desperate hug from someone drowning and clinging to the only thing they can find. I hugged her back too, but not with the unconditional love from before. Now there was calculation in my embrace, strategy. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden. Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll see what your options are. Michelle left that afternoon to get some things from her condominium. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about how easy it had been. She had come to me exactly as I had planned, broken, desperate, with no options, and best of all, she suspected nothing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother who needed her compassion. But this was only the first part of my plan. Having her live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let her settle in, feel safe, and believe she had found a refuge in my house. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to teach her the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Mr. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, I need you to do something else for me. Tell me, Mrs. Hayes. I want you to investigate Marcus's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes to whom and what legal options I have to separate them from my daughter. That will take time, but it's feasible. Perfect. And Mr. Richardson, I want you to keep this an absolute secret. No one can know I am behind this investigation. Of course, Mrs. Hayes, may I ask what your final plan is? My plan, Mr. Richardson, is very simple. I'm going to save my daughter, but first she has to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom. When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine Daniel had been saving for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd had a special occasion like this one. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I had all the good cards in my hand. Michelle moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that was left of her previous life. I watched her unpack in her old room, the same one she had slept in during her teenage years, and I could see the humiliation in every one of her movements. She had gone from living in a luxury condominium to taking refuge in her childhood bedroom. "Mom, I found this in the condominium," she said, showing me a brown envelope. It was among Marcus's things. It has your name on it." It was another one of Daniel's envelopes. My heart sped up, but I kept my composure. "My name? How strange." "Yes, look." She showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written on it in Daniel's handwriting, but this envelope was different from the one I had found in my nightstand. This one was smaller, newer. "Maybe Marcus found it among Dad's things when he died and forgot to give it to me," Angela said. "It's possible. Can I see it?" I opened the envelope in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small key. The letter said, "Margaret, if you are reading this after having received the main envelope, it means our daughter is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safety deposit box at the Central Bank downtown branch. The number is 347. There is something there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Daniel." Michelle read the letter over my shoulder. A safety deposit box. Dad had a safety deposit box. I had no idea. "I didn't either," I lied. "Your father never told me about this. Do you think we should go see what's in there?" "I don't know, honey. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are." "But, Mom, maybe there's something important in there. Documents or I don't know. Maybe something valuable that can help us." The desperation in her voice was palpable. Michelle was clinging to any possibility of finding a way out of her situation, and I was going to let her cling a little longer before I showed her the complete reality. "Okay," I said after a calculated pause, "we can go tomorrow." That night, Michelle and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She had cooked, trying to be useful, but the food tasted of guilt and desperation. She told me more details about what had happened in Australia, and each story was worse than the last. "Marcus lied about everything, Mom. Not just the business, but the debts, too. I thought he only owed a little bit of money, but it turns out he owes over $120,000. And the worst part is, he used my name for some of the loans without me knowing." "How is that possible?" "He forged my signature. When I married him, I gave him some documents to handle the banking for our joint account. I never thought he'd use them for this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know?" "I don't know. It's all so complicated. The banks say that since we were married, I'm responsible for all his debts anyway. And the divorce. I don't even know where Marcus is now. He just disappeared. His phone is disconnected. He doesn't answer emails. Nothing. It's as if he vanished." Perfect. Marcus had run away like the rat he had always been, leaving Michelle to face the consequences of her actions alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was experiencing exactly what I had felt when she abandoned me. Betrayal by someone she had completely trusted. "I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know things were so bad." "I didn't either, Mom. I thought Marcus loved me, that we were going to build something together, but it turns out I was just an easy way for him to get money and documents." Michelle started to cry again. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not realize who he really was? It was tempting to tell her that I had seen the signs from the beginning, that I had tried to warn her that Marcus never seemed trustworthy, but that would have broken my facade as a compassionate and vulnerable mother. "Love can be blinding sometimes, honey. Don't blame yourself." "But Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours, too. I treated you horribly. I took your cottage, your Toyota, your things, and all, to give to a man who abandoned me at the first opportunity. Now we're two poor women trying to survive because of me. "It's in the past, Michelle. We'll be okay." "No, it's not. Now we're both in trouble because of my mistakes. You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women trying to survive." If she only knew, I thought that at this very moment I had more money than she could possibly imagine, that I was the owner of the building where she lived, that I could solve all her problems with a single phone call. But it wasn't time yet. The next day, we went to the bank. Michelle was nervous, hopeful. I maintained my act as a confused widow who didn't understand much about finance. The bank employee led us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my identification, and opened box number 347. Inside were jewels, many jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Daniel's family. Others were completely new to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Michelle gasped, "Mom, this must be worth a fortune." "You think so?" "Yes, look at this sapphire and this pearl necklace. Mom, Dad saved a treasure here." According to Daniel's letter, the jewels were worth approximately $220,000. It was a significant amount, but it was nothing compared to the rest of my assets. It was like finding a few coins under the sofa when you have $1 million in the bank. "What do we do with this, Mom?" "I don't know, honey. They're family memories." "But Mom, we could sell some of the pieces. With this money, you could get your lake cottage back, and I could pay off some of Marcus's debts." There it was again. Even when she found something valuable, Michelle's first reaction was to think about how to use it to solve the problems Marcus had created. She hadn't learned a thing yet. "Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay Marcus's debts?" "What other option do I have, Mom? If I don't pay something soon, the banks are going to foreclose on everything I have. And technically, I don't own anything. Everything was in Marcus's name." "Think carefully, honey. Once you sell these jewels, you won't be able to get them back." "I know, but what else can I do? I can't get a job with all these legal claims pending. No employer is going to want to hire someone with so many legal problems." We took the jewels home. Michelle spread them out on the kitchen table and examined them one by one, calculating which ones she could sell and which she could keep. It was painful to watch her reduce decades of family history to numbers on a spreadsheet. "Mom, I think I can get $190,000 for the jewels," she said one afternoon. "It's less than I expected, but it's enough to pay off the most urgent debts." "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they'll seize everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some kind of legal connection to the properties." How ironic the situation was. Michelle was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying the debts of a man who had abandoned her with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who had created the fortune that could save her. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I talked to a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize the debts that have real collateral, because those are the ones that can affect property or lead to immediate foreclosure. Michelle had matured so much in these few weeks. The woman who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully investigating every financial decision. The suffering had made her more responsible, but also more fragile. That night, while she was organizing the debt documents on the table, I received a call from Mr. Richardson. Mrs. Hayes, I have a full report on Marcus's debts. The situation is worse than I thought. How much worse? He owes over $220,000 to several banks and also has debts with private lenders. What's more concerning is that he used falsified documents with your daughter's signature for some of these loans. That means Michelle is legally responsible. It's complicated. If we can prove she didn't know, we might be able to get her out of some of the debts. But it's going to be a long and expensive process. How expensive? For a good lawyer specializing in these types of cases, probably $60,000, and there's no guarantee of success. I understand. And what if she just pays the debts? If she has the money, that would be the fastest solution, but I doubt she has access to that amount. Mr. Richardson, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to get my daughter out of these debts, but don't tell her anything yet. You're going to pay, Mrs. Hayes? I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect my daughter, but this has to be handled in a very specific way. When I hung up, I found Michelle in the living room, looking at the jewels with a sad expression. She looked lost, like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. What are you thinking about, honey? About Dad, about how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I did with my life. Your father loved you very much, Michelle. He would understand. No, Mom, he taught me to be responsible, to value family, not to be selfish. And I did the exact opposite. I abandoned my mother for a man who turned out to be a liar. I sold my family's memories for money. I ruined everything he built. For the first time since she had returned, I heard a genuine regret in her voice. It wasn't just lamenting the consequences of her actions, but a true acknowledgement that she had done something morally wrong. People make mistakes, honey. The important thing is to learn from them. But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I fix the damage I've done? There was the question I had been waiting for. Michelle was finally ready to face the truth about her actions and their consequences. But it wasn't yet time to reveal my final card. First, I had to let her hit rock bottom completely. The next few days were crucial for my plan. Michelle decided to sell most of the jewels, keeping only the engagement ring Daniel had given me and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I watched her prepare to go to the jewelry stores, research prices, and negotiate with buyers. It was painful to watch her reduce decades of family history to commercial transactions, but it was necessary for her to understand the real weight of her decisions. Mom, I got $190,000 for the jewels, she told me one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. It's less than I expected, but it's enough to pay off the most urgent debts. Are you sure you want to do this? I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they'll foreclose on everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some kind of legal connection to the properties. How ironic the situation was. Michelle was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying the debts of a man who had abandoned her with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who had created the fortune that could save her. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I talked to a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize the debts that have real collateral, because those are the ones that can affect property or lead to immediate foreclosure. Michelle had matured so much in these few weeks. The woman who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully investigating every financial decision. The suffering had made her more responsible, but also more fragile. That night, while she was organizing the debt documents on the table, I received a call from Mr. Richardson. "Mrs. Hayes, I have important news. We managed to locate Marcus." "Where is he?" "In Sydney, just as your daughter suspected, but here's the interesting part. He's trying to get Australian residency through a fake marriage with that young woman your daughter mentioned." "A fake marriage?" "Yes. Apparently, the girl needs papers, and he needs a way to stay in Australia without being deported. But the most important thing is that we found evidence that he deliberately falsified your daughter's documents with the intention of fleeing the country. That means Michelle can get out of the debts. With this evidence, yes, we can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter won't have to pay anything for what Marcus did behind her back. It was perfect. I had a way to save Michelle from all her debts legally without her suspecting that I had the money to do it. Mr. Richardson, I want you to start the legal process immediately. Don't tell my daughter anything yet. I want the process to be completely finished before I tell her. I don't want to give her false hope." "Understood. This will take about 3 weeks, maybe a month." "Perfect." When I hung up, Michelle looked at me with curiosity. "Who was that, Mom?" "A lady who was asking about Mrs. Thompson, our neighbor on the corner. She had the wrong number." Lying had become easy. Every day that passed, I felt more comfortable with this double life I was leading. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother Michelle believed me to be. On the other, I was a wealthy woman, silently orchestrating my daughter's salvation and education. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Michelle struggle with decisions she never had to make: how to stretch money for food, how to negotiate with creditors, how to look for a job when your credit history is ruined. It was a cruel but necessary education. "Mom, I went to 4 job interviews today," she told me one evening, coming home with swollen feet and a tired face. 3 of them told me they can't hire me because of the pending legal problems. The 4th one offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night. "Are you going to take it?" "I have no choice. It pays very little, but it's better than nothing. And I can work at night so I can keep looking for something better during the day." Seeing my daughter, who had lived a comfortable life for over 40 years, preparing to clean offices at night, broke my heart. But it also filled me with pride. She was finally facing reality without expecting someone else to solve her problems. "Are you sure you can handle so much physical work?" "I'll have to learn. I can't keep being a burden to you, Mom. It's bad enough that you're letting me live here for free." "This is your home, Michelle." "No, Mom, this is your home and I'm here because of your generosity. But I'm not going to take advantage of it forever." One night, while Michelle was on her first cleaning shift, Dorothy came to visit. She sat in the kitchen with me, drinking tea and looking at the family photos on the walls. "Margaret, I have to ask you something. Did you know Michelle was going to come back in these conditions?" "What do you mean?" "Well, when she left, she seemed so sure of herself, so confident. She talked about the great life she was going to have in Australia, about how successful Marcus was, and now she's back, completely broken, working a cleaning job, living with you again." "Life takes many turns, Dorothy." "Yes, but there's something else. I've been watching Michelle these days, and she looks different. Not just sad, but humble, as if she learned something important. Dorothy had always been very perceptive. What do you think she learned? I think she learned the value of the things she had taken for granted, like having a mother who loves her unconditionally. Maybe, Dorothy. Can I tell you something? When Michelle left and treated you so badly, many of us thought you would never forgive her. But here you are taking care of her again, giving her a home when she has nowhere to go. She's my daughter, Dorothy. Yes, but not every mother would do what you're doing, especially after being treated the way you were treated. If Dorothy only knew the complete truth, that I had the power to solve all of Michelle's problems, but was choosing to let her suffer a little longer so she would learn the full lesson. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing what a good mother would do, but I also think Michelle needs to fully understand what she lost when she abandoned you. What do you mean? I think she needs to value you not just as the mother who rescues her when she's in trouble, but as the strong woman who built a stable life for 47 years. She needs to respect you, not just need you. Dorothy had hit the nail on the head. That was exactly the point of my entire plan. I didn't want Michelle to come back to me out of desperation. I wanted her to come back out of genuine respect and mature love. And how do you think that can happen? I think it's already happening. I've seen her these past few days, Margaret. The way she talks to you now is completely different. She's no longer the daughter who gives you orders or treats you like a burden. Now she's a grown woman who is genuinely grateful to have a mother like you. That night when Michelle returned from her job, I saw her arrive tired, but with a new dignity. She had earned those few dollars with her own effort, and that meant something to her. How was your first day? Hard, but not as bad as I thought. The other ladies who worked there helped me a lot. One of them, Mrs. Patterson, taught me tricks to clean more efficiently. Mrs. Patterson? Yes, she's 58 years old and has been cleaning offices for 18 years. She told me she started after her husband left her with 3 small children. She says it's not the job she dreamed of, but that it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman. She is. She said something that made me think a lot. She told me there are 2 types of people who end up doing this job, the ones who are there because they never had opportunities, and the ones who are there because they ruined the opportunities they did have. She asked me which group I was in. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth, that I had all the opportunities in the world, a family that loved me, a stable home, an inheritance, and that I ruined it all by following a worthless man. What did she say? She laughed and said, "Well, honey, then at least you know exactly why you're here. That puts you one step ahead of most people." Michelle poured herself a glass of water and sat with me at the table. "Mom, I want you to know something. These past few weeks have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. Why? Because I finally understand what really matters. It's not money. It's not living in the most luxurious condominium. It's not impressing people. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart." Michelle, no, let me finish. You have every right to hate me for what I did to you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took everything Dad left you. I treated you as if you were a nuisance. And now I'm here, again expecting you to forgive me and take care of me. I already forgave you, honey. But I haven't forgiven myself, and I won't until I prove that I've truly changed, that I've learned from my mistakes. Mr. Richardson called me the next morning. Mrs. Hayes, I have excellent news. The legal process is almost complete. We can get your daughter out of all of Marcus's debts. It was time. After weeks of watching Michelle struggle, work, and reflect on her mistakes, the moment had finally arrived to show her that she had never been alone, that she had always had someone quietly watching over her. Mr. Richardson, I want you to organize a meeting. It's time for my daughter to know the whole truth. Mr. Richardson arranged the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Michelle that I had made an appointment with a lawyer who could help her with her legal problems, but I didn't explain the details. She agreed to come, although she was nervous about the cost of the consultation. Mom, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I barely have enough to cover basic expenses. Don't worry about that now, honey. Let's just hear what he has to say. We arrived at Mr. Richardson's office on time. Michelle had dressed in her best clothes, which now looked a little big on her thinner body. She was nervous, wringing her hands, expecting another piece of bad news on her endless list of problems. Mr. Richardson greeted us with his usual professional smile. Mrs. Hayes, Miss Hayes, thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing us, Michelle replied. Although I should warn you that my financial situation is very complicated, and I probably can't afford high fees. That's exactly what we're going to talk about, Mr. Richardson said, exchanging a look with me. But first, I need you to review these documents. Mr. Richardson handed Michelle a thick folder. She opened it and began to read, her expression gradually changing from confusion to surprise. I don't understand. These documents say that Marcus forged my signature, that there is evidence of fraud, that I am not responsible for the debts. That's right. We have been investigating your case for the past few weeks. We found enough evidence to prove that you were a victim of identity fraud. But how is that possible? Who paid for this investigation? I don't have money for this. Mr. Richardson looked at me. It was my moment. Michelle, there's something I need to tell you. What, Mom? I took a deep breath. After weeks of acting, I was finally going to reveal the truth. Your father left me more than you knew, much more. What do you mean? Mr. Richardson, show her the other documents. Mr. Richardson took out a second folder and handed it to Michelle. This time, the documents were the property deeds, the bank statements, the investment certificates, the entire fortune Daniel had built in secret. Michelle read in silence for several minutes. Her face went through a complete range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally comprehension. Mom, this says you are the owner of the condominium building where I lived. Yes. And that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments. Yes. This means that when I sold the lake cottage, it was your cottage, and the sale was fraudulent. I already got it back. Michelle stared at the papers, trying to process the information. How long have you known this? Since the day you called me from the doctor's office. You knew all this when I came back from Australia asking for help? Yes. You knew you could solve all my problems when you saw me crying every night? Yes. There was a long, tense silence. Michelle closed the folders and looked directly into my eyes. Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me? This was the question I had been waiting for weeks. Because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. What? You needed to learn the value of the things you had lost, the value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me. It was dignity. It was love. It was trust. Michelle started to cry, but they weren't tears of self-pity like the ones she had shed during these weeks. They were tears of deep understanding. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like garbage. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Mr. Richardson discreetly intervened. Miss Hayes, your mother has paid all the legal expenses to free you from Marcus's debts. She has also recovered all the properties that were sold fraudulently. You are completely free of legal problems. And the cleaning job I got? You can quit if you want, I said, but I hope you don't. Why? Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when everything was easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the importance of valuing every dollar you earn. Michelle wiped her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter who needs her mother, but the look of a grown woman who respects another woman. Do you forgive me, Mom? I forgave you a long time ago, honey. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things. People make mistakes, Michelle. The important thing is what we do after we recognize those mistakes. Mr. Richardson left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Michelle and I sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you were really the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson? That there is nothing more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally. During these past few weeks, the only thing that kept me sane was knowing I had a home with you, that no matter how much I had ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Michelle. I know, but I also know that I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just words. We left Mr. Richardson's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter, united by blood and habit. We were two grown women who had chosen each other after going through the most difficult test imaginable. The following weeks were about rebuilding, but not the kind Michelle expected. Even though she now knew I had enough resources to solve all her problems, she decided to keep her night cleaning job. Mom, I need to finish what I started, she told me one afternoon as she was getting ready for work. I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened. Are you sure you don't have to punish yourself forever? It's not a punishment. It's a way of remembering who I was and who I want to be now. I watched her put on her work uniform, something unthinkable a few months ago when she lived in the luxury condominium with Marcus. But there was something different in her posture, in the way she moved. She was no longer the broken woman who had arrived crying at my door. She was someone who had found dignity in honest work. Dorothy came to visit me that afternoon, as she had done every few days since Michelle had returned. Margaret, there are some very strange rumors going around the neighborhood. What kind of rumors? People are saying that you're not as poor as we all thought. Someone saw Michelle leaving a very elegant lawyer's office downtown, and then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank. That costs a lot of money, Margaret. People talk a lot, Dorothy. Yes, but they're also saying you got your lake cottage back, and that somehow you managed to solve all of Michelle's legal problems. Dorothy knew me too well to fool her for long. What do you want to know exactly? I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been lying to me about her situation. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from her. It was time to be honest with someone else. Daniel left me more than anyone knew, Dorothy. Much more. How much more? Enough so that Michelle and I never have to worry about money again. Dorothy was silent for a moment, processing the information. And why did you pretend to be poor all these months? Because I needed Michelle to learn something she couldn't learn any other way. I told her the whole story, Michelle's cruel phone call, my plan of silent revenge, the weeks of watching her hit rock bottom, and finally the revelation in Mr. Richardson's office. Margaret, that is brilliant and terrible at the same time. Terrible? Yes, because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped her immediately. But also brilliant because I understand why you did it. You do? Yes. Michelle needed to learn the value of the things she had lost. If you had simply given her money to solve her problems, she would have learned that there's always someone who will rescue her from the consequences of her bad decisions. Exactly. But Margaret, didn't it hurt you to see her suffer? Every day, every night I saw her crying. Every morning I saw her get up to go to work, tired and defeated. But I knew that if I rescued her too soon, she wouldn't have learned the full lesson. And do you think she learned it? Look for yourself. Michelle knows that she now has access to enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to keep her job. She knows she can move to a better place, but she decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about the debts, but she's using her own savings to help other women in similar situations. She's helping other women? Yes, she became friends with the ladies she works with and is using some of the money she earned cleaning offices to help a coworker who is having trouble paying for her son's daycare. Dorothy smiled. That's not the Michelle who went to Australia. No, she's not. This Michelle understands that money is a tool, not a goal. She understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from material possessions. That night, when Michelle returned from work, she found me reading in the living room. Mom, I have to tell you something. Today, Mrs. Patterson asked me if I was the daughter of the rich lady from the north side of town. What did you tell her? I said yes, that you have enough money for me not to have to work. And do you know what she asked me next? What? She asked me why I was still working, so I explained that it was because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. And what did she say? She laughed and said, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom taught you how to be truly rich." Mrs. Patterson is very wise. She is, and she made me understand something important. It's not about the money you have, but about how you use it and how you relate to it. Michelle sat down with me on the sofa. Mom, I want you to know that I've made a decision. I'm going to keep living here with you, but not as a daughter who has come back home to her parents. I want to stay here as a grown woman who chooses to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? The difference is that I'm going to pay my share of the expenses. I'm going to contribute to the upkeep of the house, and I'm going to treat this relationship as a partnership between two independent women who love and respect each other. Michelle, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Mom, I need our relationship to be different from what it was before. Before, I was a daughter who took her mother's love and care for granted. Now I want to be a grown woman who values and takes care of the most important relationship in her life. And your job. I'm going to keep working, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to go back to school. I want to prepare myself to do something more meaningful with my life, but I want to do it step by step, earning every opportunity. Do you have any idea what you want to study? Yes, I want to study social work. These past few weeks have taught me how many people are going through difficult situations. Without having anyone to support them, I want to use the resources we have to help other women who are going through what I went through. It was perfect. Michelle had not only learned to value what she had, but she had found a way to use her experience for something constructive. And what about Marcus? Mr. Richardson told me he was arrested in Australia for the fraudulent marriage. He's going to be deported soon, but honestly, Mom, I don't care anymore. That part of my life is over. You don't feel any resentment? No, Marcus did me a favor without even knowing it. If he hadn't abandoned and betrayed me, I never would have hit rock bottom. And if I had never hit rock bottom, I never would have learned to truly value what I have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed completely at peace. My plan had worked perfectly. Michelle had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but she had emerged from the experience as a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. Daniel would have been so proud. 6 months later, our life had found a new balance that neither of us could have imagined before. Michelle finished her social work studies with excellent grades, and I decided to use some of my resources to establish a foundation to help women in situations of domestic violence and financial abandonment. Mom, the letter from the university arrived, Michelle said one morning, coming into the kitchen with an envelope in her hands. I was accepted into the master's program. I start next semester, but Mom, I want you to know I'm going to pay for it with my own savings. I've been saving money from my job at the community center. The salary isn't high, but she had learned to live with the essentials and to value every dollar she earned. Are you sure? We can easily afford the master's program. I know, but I need to do it on my own. It's part of who I am now. Dorothy came to visit that afternoon, as she had done every Friday for the past few months. She had become a confidant to both of us, watching our transformation with fascination. Margaret, I have to confess something, she said, pouring herself a second cup of tea. At first, I thought you were very cruel to Michelle. And what do you think now? Now I think you were the wisest mother I've ever known. Look at your daughter. Really look at her. It was true. The Michelle who was in the living room, studying for her exams, was completely different from the one who had left for Australia months ago. This Michelle had a serenity that came from within, a confidence that was based on her own achievements, not on material possessions. Did you know I saw Michelle at the grocery store yesterday, buying vegetables for a family she's helping through her job? She hadn't told me. And when I asked her why she was using her own money instead of the government budget, she told me that some things can't be measured in official budgets. That night, Michelle and I had dinner on the deck, something that had become a tradition. It was our time to talk about the day, plan for the future, and simply enjoy each other's company. "Mom, I received a very strange letter today," she said, cutting her salad. "From whom?" "From Marcus." My muscles tensed. "Marcus, he wrote to you? From where?" "From prison in Australia. Apparently, he was sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. In the letter, he says he regrets everything he did and wants to ask for my forgiveness." "And how do you feel about it?" "Honestly, I don't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. It's as if that part of my life happened decades ago, not months ago." "Are you going to write back?" "No, not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. That Michelle who married him no longer exists. This Michelle has nothing to talk to him about." I was impressed by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting across from me had developed an inner strength that came from hitting rock bottom and getting up on her own. "Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Mom?" "What?" "That true love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the one that teaches you what you need to learn, even when it hurts. It's a difficult lesson to learn, but it's a necessary one." Marcus told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. He convinced me that I deserved a life of luxury without effort. "You taught me that true wealth comes from hard work, respect, and genuine relationships." That night, after Michelle went to her room to study, I sat on the deck alone, looking at the stars and thinking about Daniel. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt I had fulfilled that promise in the right way. I hadn't taken care of her by giving her money when she needed it. I had taken care of her by teaching her to take care of herself. I hadn't saved her by solving her problems. I had saved her by allowing her to learn to solve them on her own. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the lake cottage together for the first time since I had gotten it back. Michelle hadn't wanted to go before, saying she needed time to process everything that had happened. "Are you ready?" I asked her as we got into the Toyota. "I think so." The trip was silent but comfortable. When we arrived, Michelle stood for a moment in the truck, looking at the cottage where we had spent so many family summers. "It looks exactly the same," she said finally. "Some things don't change, but others do. I am not the same person who sold this cottage. We went in together. The cottage was clean and tidy, exactly as Daniel and I had kept it for years. Michelle walked through each room, touching the furniture and looking at the family photos that hung on the walls. "Mom, I want to apologize." "You already apologized, honey." "No, I want to apologize specifically for this cottage. Not just for selling it, but for reducing all our family memories to a commercial transaction." "It's forgiven." This cottage represents 40 years of family summers, of birthdays, of holidays. Dad built that deck with his own hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim at that lake. And I turned it all into money to fund the adventure of a worthless man. She sat on the sofa, like where Daniel used to read on Sunday mornings. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" "What?" "That when I sold it, I didn't feel anything. It was just another property. Now, being here again, I can feel Dad in every corner. I can hear his laughter, smell his morning coffee, see his reading glasses on the table. He is here, Michelle. He has always been here. I know, and I also know that he is proud of how you handled all of this. We spent the whole day at the cottage cooking together, cleaning, and fixing small details. It was like a ritual of reconnection, not just with the place, but with the values that place represented. When the sun began to set, we sat on the deck Daniel had built, looking at the lake. "Mom, I have a proposal." "What is it?" "I want us to turn this cottage into a temporary shelter for women who are leaving situations of domestic violence, a place where they can stay while they rebuild their lives." It was the perfect proposal. Daniel would have loved the idea that his lake cottage would serve to help other families. "I think that's a beautiful idea, honey. We can use some of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I can oversee the program through my job." "Are you sure you want to turn our family sanctuary into that, Mom?" "The best sanctuaries are the ones that are shared. Dad always said that a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to other people who need love." He was right. Daniel had always been generous with our home, inviting relatives, friends, and neighbors who needed a place to stay. We returned home that night with a new project and a completely renewed relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter, united by obligation or need. We were two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together based on love, respect, and a common purpose. That night, before falling asleep, I spoke to Daniel in silence. "We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understood what truly matters." And for the first time since his death, I felt he answered me. "I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think." Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education, not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something much more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship built on a solid foundation that no future crisis could destroy. The foundation we established began operating 3 months later. Michelle worked tirelessly to ensure every detail was perfect. She interviewed potential beneficiaries, coordinated with social workers, and personally oversaw the restoration of the lake cottage to accommodate families in need. "Mom, our first family arrives next week," she told me one evening, reviewing documents at the kitchen table. "It's a woman named Sarah with 2 young children. She left an abusive relationship and has nowhere to go." "How did you find her?" "Through the community center where I work. She's been living in her car for the past 2 weeks while trying to find a shelter with availability. When I told her about our program, she cried with relief." I watched Michelle organize folders, make phone calls, and coordinate services with a dedication I had never seen in her before. This was not the same woman who had viewed properties as mere financial assets. This was someone who understood that real wealth lies in the impact you have on others' lives. The day Sarah arrived at the lake cottage with her children, Michelle and I were there to welcome her. Sarah was a thin woman in her early 30s, with tired eyes but a determined expression. Her children, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5, clung to her nervously. "Welcome," Michelle said warmly, kneeling down to the children's level. "This is going to be your home for as long as you need it." Sarah looked around the cottage with tears in her eyes. "I can't believe this is real. I can't believe someone would do this for strangers." "You're not a stranger," I told her gently. "You're a mother doing everything she can to protect her children. That makes you family." Over the next few weeks, we watched Sarah slowly regain her confidence. Michelle helped her apply for jobs, connected her with legal services, and even babysat her children so Sarah could attend interviews. One afternoon, I found Michelle and Sarah sitting on the deck, talking quietly while the children played by the lake. "You know," Sarah was saying, "when I left my husband, everyone told me I was making a mistake. They said I couldn't make it on my own, that I needed him. But you've shown me that's not true." "You already had the strength," Michelle replied. "You just needed someone to believe in you while you learned to believe in yourself." I stood there listening, hidden from view, and realized that Michelle was sharing the very lesson she had learned. She understood now that true help isn't about solving someone's problems for them. It's about giving them the tools and support they need to solve their own problems. Dorothy visited one Saturday afternoon and found Michelle working in the garden. "You've changed so much," Dorothy observed, watching Michelle plant flowers with dirt under her fingernails. The old Michelle would never have done manual labor. Michelle laughed. The old Michelle was afraid of ruining her manicure. This Michelle knows that getting your hands dirty is the only way to make something beautiful grow. 6 months after we opened the shelter, we had helped 8 families. Each one arrived broken and left stronger. Michelle kept in touch with every woman who passed through, creating a network of support and friendship that extended far beyond the walls of the cottage. One evening, Michelle came home with an unexpected announcement. "Mom, I've been offered a position at the state's largest domestic violence organization. They want me to develop a statewide program based on what we've done here." "That's wonderful, honey. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. It would mean traveling a lot, maybe even relocating. I don't want to leave you." I smiled at her concern. "Michelle, I'm not the fragile widow you thought I was, remember? I'm a wealthy woman who owns half the city." She laughed. "I know, but this isn't about you being weak or needing me. This is about me wanting to be here. I've finally found where I belong." "And where is that?" "Here with you, doing this work. Building something meaningful. I spent so many years chasing things that didn't matter. I don't want to make that mistake again. But this opportunity could help so many more women." "I know. That's why I have a counter-proposal. What if we expand our foundation? What if we use your resources to create multiple shelters across the state? I could oversee them all while still being based here." It was a brilliant idea. Over the next year, we opened 5 more shelters in different cities. Michelle managed them all with remarkable efficiency, traveling when necessary, but always returning home. Each shelter was modeled after our lake cottage, a place of healing and transformation. One afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Richardson. "Mrs. Hayes, I have some news about Marcus." "What about him?" "He's being deported back to the country next week. He's requested to speak with Michelle. He says he wants to apologize in person." I told Michelle about the call that evening. She was quiet for a long time before responding. "Do you think I should see him?" "That's entirely your decision, honey." Part of me wants to refuse, to show him that he no longer has any power over me. But another part thinks maybe he needs this for his own healing. What does your heart tell you? My heart tells me that forgiveness isn't about him. It's about me, and I've already forgiven him. Whether he knows it or not, I don't need to see him to confirm that. Then don't see him. But maybe he needs to hear it. Maybe that's part of his journey, just like hitting rock bottom was part of mine. The meeting took place in Mr. Richardson's office with both lawyers present. I waited in the reception area while Michelle went in alone. She emerged 30 minutes later, her expression calm and resolved. "How was it?" I asked as we walked to the car. He apologized. He cried. He said he was ashamed of what he'd done and that he understood if I could never forgive him. "And what did you tell him?" I told him I forgave him a long time ago, not for his sake, but for mine. I told him that what he did to me was terrible, but it also led me to discover who I really am. In a strange way, his betrayal was a gift. How did he react? He seemed confused at first, then relieved. I think he expected me to be angry or vindictive. Instead, I thanked him. "You thanked him?" "Yes, I thanked him for showing me what kind of person I didn't want to be. I thanked him for helping me find my way back to you, and I thanked him for teaching me that real strength comes from within, not from another person." As we drove home, Michelle was quiet, staring out the window. Finally, she spoke. "Mom, do you remember when you asked me if I could forgive myself?" "Yes. I think I finally can. Not because I've forgotten what I did, but because I've spent every day since then trying to be better, trying to help others, trying to honor Dad's memory and your sacrifice." "You've done more than that, honey. You've become the woman your father and I always knew you could be." That night, we had dinner on the deck, as had become our tradition. The air was warm and fireflies danced in the garden. Michelle raised her glass of wine. "I want to make a toast." "To what?" "To second chances, to mothers who love enough to let their children fall so they can learn to stand. To fathers who plan for the future, even when they're gone. And to the journey that brought us here." We clinked glasses, and I felt tears in my eyes. "Your father would be so proud of you. He'd be proud of both of us. You could have just given me money and solved all my problems. Instead, you gave me something much more valuable. You gave me the opportunity to save myself." 2 years after that fateful phone call in the hospital waiting room, our foundation had helped over 50 families. Michelle had completed her master's degree and had become a recognized expert in trauma recovery and financial abuse. She still lived with me, not because she had to, but because she chose to. One morning, I woke to find Michelle already in the kitchen, making breakfast. She had prepared tea with honey and toast, exactly as Daniel used to do. "Good morning, beautiful," she said, using her father's words. "What's this for?" "No reason. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see everything you've done for me, and I'm grateful every single day." We sat at the table, eating breakfast in comfortable silence. Through the window, I could see the garden Michelle had planted, now in full bloom. The flowers she had chosen were the same ones Daniel used to grow. "Mom, I have something to tell you." "What is it?" "I've been seeing someone. His name is David. He's a social worker I met through the foundation." "That's wonderful, honey. Tell me about him." "He's kind. He's genuine. He volunteers at homeless shelters on weekends. He's nothing like Marcus." "Are you happy?" "I am, but this time I'm not losing myself in the relationship. I'm bringing my whole self to it, the strong version of me that you helped create." "When do I get to meet him?" "He's coming for dinner on Sunday. But Mom, I want you to know something. No matter what happens with David or anyone else, you come first. This relationship we've built, this life we've created together, that's my foundation. Everything else is just an addition." Sunday arrived, and David turned out to be exactly as Michelle described. He was thoughtful and humble, and genuinely interested in our foundation's work. Over dinner, he shared his own story of growing up in poverty and working his way through college. "Michelle tells me you're the mastermind behind everything," he said to me. "I'm just the financial support. Michelle is the heart of the operation." "She talks about you constantly," he said with a warm smile. "About how you taught her the most important lesson of her life." "And what lesson was that?" "That real love sometimes means letting go so the other person can learn to fly." After dinner, I watched Michelle and David walk in the garden, their heads close together in conversation. Dorothy, who had joined us for dinner, stood beside me at the window. "She really has changed, hasn't she?" "Completely. And it's all because of what you did. You know that, right?" "It's because of what we all did. Daniel for planning ahead, Michelle for being willing to learn, and me for having the courage to let her struggle." "Do you ever regret it? Letting her suffer when you could have helped?" "Not for a second. If I had rescued her immediately, she would have learned that there's always a safety net. She wouldn't have developed her own strength. She wouldn't have found her purpose." "You're a remarkable woman, Margaret." "No, I'm just a mother who loved her daughter enough to teach her a hard lesson." That night, after everyone had left, Michelle and I sat on the deck under the stars. "David is wonderful," I told her. "He is. But Mom, I want you to know that even when I get married someday, even if I have children, you're always going to be my priority. This life we've built together means everything to me." "I know, honey, but you need to build your own life too." "I am, but my life includes you. Not because I need you to take care of me, but because I genuinely enjoy your company. Because you're my best friend. Because everything good in my life now exists because of the foundation you helped me build." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds. I thought about how far we had come from that phone call in the hospital waiting room. Michelle had gone from being a daughter who saw me as a burden to a woman who chose to share her life with me. And I had gone from being a grieving widow to someone with renewed purpose. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think Dad knew all of this would happen? Do you think he planned for you to teach me this lesson?" "I think your father knew that money without character is worthless. I think he trusted me to raise you right, even if it meant doing it twice." "Doing it twice?" "The first time was when you were a child. I taught you to walk, to talk, to read. But somehow along the way, you forgot the most important lessons. So I had to teach you again, this time about dignity, respect, and the true value of family. I'm sorry it took me so long to learn." "Don't be sorry. Be grateful for the journey. Every mistake you made led you to where you are now." Michelle leaned her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, honey." We stayed there until the stars filled the entire sky. And I knew that somewhere up there, Daniel was smiling down at us, proud of the women we had become and the life we had built from the ashes of betrayal and loss. The next morning, I found a letter on the kitchen table. It was from Michelle, written in her careful handwriting. "Dear Mom, I'm writing this because some things are too important to say just once. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on you. Thank you for being strong enough to let me fall so I could learn to stand. Thank you for showing me that real wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. Thank you for teaching me that love isn't just about comfort. It's also about growth, even when growth is painful. Most of all, thank you for being my mother, not just in biology, but in every choice you've made. You could have written me off when I betrayed you. You could have taken your revenge and left me to suffer. Instead, you orchestrated the most important lesson of my life. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love and your sacrifice. I will help other women the way you helped me. I will teach my own children someday about the grandmother who loved their mother enough to let her hit rock bottom. This is not just a thank you letter. This is a promise. I promise to never forget where I came from. I promise to use our resources to help others. I promise to honor Dad's memory by being the person he hoped I would become. And I promise to love you with actions, not just words, every single day for the rest of my life. Your daughter, Michelle. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This was what I had worked for. This was what Daniel had planned for. Not just financial security, but emotional and spiritual transformation. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sarah, the first woman we had helped at the lake cottage. Mrs. Hayes, I wanted to tell you that I got the promotion. I'm now the assistant manager at the store. I can finally afford my own place. That's wonderful, Sarah. It's because of you and Michelle. You didn't just give me a place to stay. You gave me my dignity back. You taught me that I could stand on my own. You always had that strength, Sarah. We just gave you a safe place to remember it. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my tea, looking around at the house that had witnessed so much transformation. This was no longer just the house where Daniel and I had grown old together. It was the house where Michelle had learned to become herself. It was the house where broken women found healing. It was the house where love meant something real. That afternoon, Michelle came home early from work with news. Mom, the state wants to fund our models statewide. They're offering us a grant to open 10 more shelters. That's incredible. I know, but I told them I needed to discuss it with my partner first. Your partner? Yes, you. This is our foundation, our work. I don't make major decisions without you. We spent the evening reviewing the proposal, discussing logistics and planning for expansion. We worked side by side, not as mother rescuing daughter, but as equals building something meaningful together. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I realized that this was the ending Daniel had envisioned. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and earned and beautiful in its authenticity. You know what the best part of all this is? Michelle asked, closing her laptop. What? I get to spend every day with my best friend, doing work that matters, helping people who need it. How many people can say that about their lives? Not many, I agreed. We're lucky. Not lucky, Mom, blessed, and we earned this blessing through the hardest lesson either of us has ever learned. That night, I went to bed with a full heart. My daughter was safe. She was whole. She was purposeful. And most importantly, she understood what truly mattered. The money Daniel left us had become a tool for transformation, not just for Michelle, but for dozens of women who would never know his name, but would benefit from his wisdom. As I drifted off to sleep, I whispered to the darkness, "We did it, Daniel. We raised her right. It just took us a little longer than expected." And in the quiet of the night, I could almost hear him whisper back, I never doubted you for a moment, my love, not for a single moment. Justice had come full circle, not through revenge or punishment, but through love, patience, and the courage to let go so someone could learn to fly. And in the end, we had all won. Michelle won her true self. I won my daughter back. And Daniel's legacy won a chance to change the world, one broken family at a time. The story that began with a cold phone call in a hospital waiting room had transformed into something beautiful, a testament to the power of strategic love, patient wisdom, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who chose each other, not once, but twice.